Hello, this is Brian. Today is Tuesday, August 9th, 2022. I'm here in northern part of Tecolote Canyon here in San Diego in the Clairemont Mesa neighborhood. I want to do a spotlight on shrubs. I want to spotlight an extremely common portion of our plant community here in Southern California. Something you're going to see a lot if you go hiking. Today I want to focus on the California buckwheat, also known as flat top buckwheat. This is Eriogonum fasciculatum, often pronounced Eriogonum as well. I pronounce it Eriogonum. I don't think there's a hard, fast rule for that. I digress. But since we're talking about the California buckwheat, there are three different subspecies or varieties. Some people call them subspecies, some people keep them at the variety level. So we have the coastal California buckwheat, Eriogonum fasciculatum, variety fasciculatum. And we have the foothill or leafy buckwheat, Eriogonum fasciculatum, variety foliolosum. And we have the Mojave buckwheat, Eriogonum fasciculatum, variety polifolium. Well, considering where I am, I'm just a couple miles inland from the ocean. I'm looking at the coastal California buckwheat. Again, this is Eriogonum fasciculatum, variety fasciculatum. That variety is the subject of today's spotlight. Since I'm in an area where it's relegated to one variety, my spotlight's going to focus on that. So this is Eriogonum fasciculatum, variety fasciculatum, the coastal California buckwheat. As you can see here, it is a fairly low growing shrub, but sometimes with age it can get up to about 3-4 feet tall sometimes. It's a plant you've probably seen if you've done any hiking in the coastal canyons of San Diego, like here in Tecolote Canyon. It's a very common component in the vegetation here, specifically in sunny areas, sunny openings in chaparral, coastal sage scrub, and sunny openings in woodland, meadows, grasslands, and hills, canyons, and mountains. Now, this variety is specific to areas that receive coastal influence climatologically. In other words, marine air. So this area, being relatively close to the ocean, gets the phenomenon called the marine layer, when stratus clouds from the cooler waters of the Pacific condense and blow inland, creating nature's air conditioner, keeping the temperatures from getting too hot. So this variety of buckwheat grows best in the coastal environment, hence the coastal variety of buckwheat. Now, the other two, variety foliolosum and polifolium, grow further and further inland respectively and experience more swings in temperature and a little bit more. The leafy one experiences more of a little bit more of a continental air mass influence, but also gets some onshore coastal conditions as well. That's the foothill variety foliolosum. And then variety polifolium relies more on living in continental air masses, like in the higher mountains, the hot deserts, where it gets cold at night and hot during the day sometimes. So the coastal buckwheat, the one here, is much more at home with minimal seasonal change in temperatures. So you're looking at this plant and say, Brian, when are you going to talk about these awesome flowers? Yeah, the flowers are a very important aspect of the buckwheats and buckwheats in general, because most of them have these awesome clusters of white to pinkish flowers. A lot of times there'll be a little spots of pinkish on these flowers. And it's hard to get really good details on them there because the individual flowers are very small on buckwheats. They're 5-petaled, and a lot of times they'll have a little dash of pink or a little stripe of pink in them. And you can see they grow in these umbel-like clusters. Sometimes the flower clusters can be flat looking or flat in profile, hence the sometimes used name is flat top buckwheat. But late spring through most of the summer, we're in the first half of August right now, these plants are exuberant in bloom. Even in a drought year like this one and like last one, these plants are reliable bloomers. So for the drought tolerant garden, your buckwheats would make a great addition, especially if you want to have flowers and bees and wildlife around. The plant is great for it. See, the coastal California buckwheat, obviously you choose this for the coast and near coastal areas, and obviously the leafy one for inland foothills, and the Mojave one for desert climates. So, as I mentioned, there are 3 varieties. So that means there's got to be some morphological difference between them, right? Yes. And most of that differentiation comes in the structure of the leaf. Now, all of our buckwheats have relatively narrow, small, relatively linear leaves, and they are borne in these clusters along the twig. So you can see here, this branch right here, and you can see like a little bundle of leaves. That's where the name fasciculatum comes from. Fascicle, bundled. That's from Latin. There's another plant called Adenostoma fasciculatum, which is the chemise, and like the buckwheat, their leaves are bundled, aka fascicled fasciculatum, along the edges of the twigs. So, how do I know, without the context of this being close to the ocean, how do I know that this is actually variety fasciculatum? Eriogonum fasciculatum, variety fasciculatum. Well, I'm looking at the leaves of these plants to show why. So, the leaves are relatively narrow on all varieties. However, on the coastal one, the tops of the leaves are hairless on variety fasciculatum. Eriogonum fasciculatum, variety fasciculatum, the coastal buckwheat, hairless leaf tops, narrowly rolled under leaf edges. So the edges of these leaves are rolled down a little bit, and it varies depending on how much sun the individual leaves receive. The ones out more in the open sun are going to be more tightly curled up than the ones that are less exposed to the sun further down the branches of the shrub. So the top of the leaves of the coastal buckwheat are glabrous, in other words, hairless. So if you look at the top of the leaves and you see that they're hairless and they're somewhat rolled over, then you know you're looking at the coastal variety. The undersides of the leaves are whitish due to the hairiness on the underside of the leaves. So again, coastal California buckwheat, leaf edges slightly to moderately rolled under, hairless on top, whitish hairy on the bottom. That's how you can tell. Most of the other aspects of this plant, its growth, some of the other varieties might have a little bit more of an upright habit, but to me that's not always the best indicator. I just look at the leaves and the context of where it's growing. I'm here by the coast, variety fasciculatum. In the foothills, variety foliolosum. In the mountains, in high desert, variety polifolium. So the sign of summer here in Southern California, whether you're in the foothills, the desert, or the coast, the sign of summer is the blossoms of the flower. Again, late spring through most of summer, these plants are going to be covered in varying degrees of white flowers, usually peaking in early summer, anywhere from June to July. So you notice here there's a lot of browning on the inflorescence of these plants. That's because we're getting ready to transition into seed season. So by fall, late summer into fall, most of these plants are going to just have brown tops on them, like this. This is the transition of going from flower to fruit, or in other words, it is one of the marks of change of seasons here in Southern California. Now where I am, the only really major marks in the change of seasons, we're going into fall, Santa Ana winds, and in the rainy season. Temperatures, yeah, will go down obviously for fall and winter, especially winter, because fall can be windy and hot. We use this plant as an indicator of the seasons. So as we are starting to transition between the main summer bloom and eventually going into the fall seed season. So probably about a month or two, most of these plants, there might still be some pom-poms of white flowers. Some of these will flower quite late into the year, especially in the coastal areas. Some of these plants will flower late, sometimes into fall, but the majority of the plants will be brown. And that is kind of an indication of fall color. And also that down the road, the other plants like the willows and cottonwoods, they'll be changing color and their leaves will be turning yellow and falling off. So another thing about the buckwheat is that it is very, very, very much a pollinator's haven. The pollinators love these, especially bees. As you can see here, we have some Apis mellifera. These are your common European honeybees that love these flowers. And I haven't tried it before, but I heard the honey from buckwheat is supposed to be exquisite. The honey of buckwheat is supposed to be exquisite. I've yet to try it. And when I do, I should make a video about that. Maybe an addendum spotlight. But you can see, the pollinators love these buckwheats. And like I said, even in dry years, these plants do not disappoint. I have yet to see buckwheat ever disappoint. These plants just light up. Where everything else is brown and dead looking, or dormant, these guys are at their peak. Just floriferous and abundant. So what about some of the other aspects? So the seeds are those small brown remnants of the flowers that kind of crumble in your hands. But what about some of the other aspects of the plant? Like the bark, the branches. See, the branches are quite wiry. These buckwheats can either be more of a ground cover shrub in some circumstances to somewhat upright, as these ones are. Sometimes the older ones are quite upright. Ones that are growing right next to walls and fences can actually be very upright and even taller than a human. I've seen that before along fences and stuff like that, but that's only because they have the fence to support them. Usually they're fairly low growing, but you see the higher branches and twigs are kind of a reddish color with a little bit of pubescence, and it grades down into a medium to dark gray. And further down, let's go find an older one here. I can show you the bark of an older specimen. Eventually the older branches get all gray and furrowed. As you can see here, this old buckwheat right here is very gray, stringy, and furrowed, as you can see here. And it can be very twisty and gnarly. So this one right here is a very old one. This one's about this one's about 7 feet tall. That branch right there is part of this. So I don't normally come across a lot of buckwheat this tall, but older specimens have been known to get pretty tall. Again, this is actually a very awesome example that I'm glad I saw here in my spotlight video, because these are beautiful plants. They really are. Great for your garden. Do not require really much of any maintenance. maybe just a little supplemental watering when you're getting them established, but after that, you leave them on their own. They should be just fine. They should be just fine. And they will provide years of flowers. I've actually grown this species from seed before. I think mine was the foliolosum variety because I got it from Fullerton when I was living in Orange County. Mine should have been variety foliolosum. And I remember within a year or two, my buckwheats were, growing very well, and then eventually I got them to flower a few times. Eventually they fizzled out on me, unfortunately. I miss them. But I had buckwheats too, and they were flowering. One of them even self-seeded into my garden. So occasionally you get seedlings popping up. So what a great plant to have in your garden. Again, you want to be cognizant of where you live so you know where to get your seed sources. Get your seed sources from the same climate where you live, so you'll have a better chance of success. If you're going to be in the inland foothills, get variety foliolosum. If you're going to be here near the coast, make sure you get variety fasciculatum. I will be featuring the other varieties on future Spotlight videos, so you can get an appreciation for their morphological differences from the coastal buckwheat right here. So again, buckwheats love sun. They thrive in summer dry conditions, and they do it looking like champions, like this beautiful example right here. Eriogonum fasciculatum variety fasciculatum. The beautiful coastal California buckwheat from here in San Diego. That will basically do it for my Spotlight video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found it helpful in identifying more of our plants and getting more of an appreciation for a very common member of our plant community here in San Diego. Thanks for watching my Spotlight, and I will see you on the next episode.